Self-confidence and humility may seem like opposite qualities to us, but actually they have a lot in common because they're both based on accurately assessing our good qualities and also our limitations. What's amazing is that when we meet someone who genuinely has deep humility, Geshe Dodal comes to mind, as well as our own teachers here. There's a part of us that relaxes. Have you noticed that? You feel safe in their presence because they have this deep acceptance for both their good qualities, but also their limitations, their faults. And so we can guess, it resonates with us that probably they're going to accept ours as well. And of course, there are many kinds of self-confidence. We can feel self-confident that we can make a Thai soup for 30 people or Vietnamese spring rolls, as the case may be. We can feel confident that we can organize offering service for 15 people of different capacities on a hot day. We can feel confident in many different areas. We can feel confident that we can repeat what we've heard, what we've learned. But again, when we meet someone who has genuine self-confidence that's based on just being a good human being, I guess I should take the word just out of there, based on being a human being with kindness, with compassion, with wisdom, then again, a part of us relaxes because that is a person who knows their own good qualities and they also know their limitations. And so there's no need for any self-aggrandizement or puffing themselves up in any way. And we feel that, we can resonate with that when we're with people like that. From a psychological point of view, self-confidence is described as the self-assurance that comes from trusting our abilities, capacities, and judgments. The belief that we can meet the demands of a task. So it's a lot about trusting ourselves that we can respond rather than react in certain situations. And from a Buddhist point of view, self-confidence is about knowing our strengths and our weaknesses, knowing our capacities and our aspirations for change, and our spiritual goals, knowing our values and trusting that we will act on our values as much as possible and correcting things when we make mistakes. So it requires a lot of self-reflection and self-honesty. It's also based on a Buddhist worldview. You know, we're thinking about the fact that we're not a permanent, fixed, solid, reified person. We have Buddha nature. Everyone has Buddha nature. It's based on the fact that we understand that whatever we experience now, it's because we've created causes in the past, and what we're doing right now is creating the causes for our future. So it's based on this Buddhist worldview. And the Buddhist worldview informs how we evaluate ourselves. If we have a correct way of evaluating what we're capable of and what we're not capable of, and also that we're confident in our ability to change, then we have no need to try to make ourselves pretend that we're anything other than we are. In fact, we can just drop deceit and pretension, in theory. We can all do that to the degree that we can do it right now. When we don't have a realistic sense of self-confidence, then we easily become arrogant because we don't really believe in ourselves. Have you noticed that quality in yourself from time to time? So people who brag about themselves don't really believe in themselves. Interesting, eh? Usually when we see someone who's bragging or boasting, it's irritating, isn't it? But our first response really should be compassion. This person doesn't feel comfortable in their own skin. How can I develop some compassion for them? Luckily, valid self-confidence can be cultivated, it can be developed, it can be increased all along the path. And so when I arrived at the Abbey in 2016, I had been intensively studying Buddhist philosophy for about 15 years. And I knew the Lam pretty well, at least I thought I did. I was teaching, I was tutoring for the Geshe program. I was leading short tantric retreats. I had a good reputation among the lay people, not so much around, among the monastics, but among the lay people, they thought I was great. I had a pretty good setup. I had my own house. They paid me a stipend every week. We were 30 minutes from the beach. You know, it was a pretty good setup. But I was unhappy because I was arrogant. I was very arrogant about what I thought I knew and who I thought I was. And I was using the Dharma to build up my own self-esteem, the opposite of what the Dharma is really about. So don't get me wrong, I deeply value the experiences that I had previously and the study I've done and the opportunities for teaching and growing. I was applying the Dharma. I was developing to, in certain ways. I was working with the afflictions, but I was deeply unhappy. And so that was a clue that something was wrong. So I'm very grateful to be a student of Venerable Tipton Chodron, to be part of this Sangha, because here we're not only studying the Dharma, we are applying it. We're attempting to apply it in every moment. That's what makes the Abbey different. We're encouraged in so many different ways to walk the talk, not just to become talking heads, but to walk the talk. So here we're developing our self-confidence by knowing the Dharma values that we want to live by, to really think about them. What are the values we want to live by? We voluntarily take all the precepts that we hold. No one's forcing us to do that. And so we need to know why they are a benefit to us. We start each day with these 3 aspirations. They seem so simple, but when they frame our day, they make a difference. The aspirations for bodhicitta. We start offering service by cultivating our motivation. Again, thinking about why we're doing these mundane tasks, most of them mundane, not all. And when we cook for our community, we start with a good motivation. The food will nourish their bodies, and the love we put into it will nourish their hearts. That's my favorite part. And when we, before we give a talk or before we prepare a BBC, we really take time to examine our motivation so that our lives become Dharma, because without a Dharma motivation, it's just worldly concerns. It's just more of the same. It's a cause for samsara. So we can easily fool ourselves into thinking we're making progress when we're not. This is the warning label I'm leaving you with today. So throughout the day, then we use mindfulness and introspective awareness to check up. What is my mind doing? Oh, I'm getting angry. I'm irritated. I'm not in a good mood. Watch out. Or I'm tired today. Really be careful. Plan the day carefully, because when I'm tired, I tend to be angry, more prone to anger. So this practice of cultivating our motivation and following through with positive actions, that's what leads to valid self-assessment and valid self-confidence. That's a big part of it. So throughout the day, some people may give us positive feedback. Hey, I like the way you led the motivation this morning, or I really like the way you helped that person find their way to, Ananda or whatever. But we also get other kind of feedback as well, don't we? The kindest kind of feedback is, when you said blah, 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 I felt X because it didn't meet my need for Y, and in the future, would you please do Z? That's the best kind of feedback we can get, or it's helpful anyway. Sometimes people just leave us on our own to guess what we did wrong and how they may have liked us to do it different. That's a little trickier to negotiate. None of us like to hear unkind words or receive any kind of harm, but Venerable reminds us often that behind aversion to such things is our own attachment to ego-pleasing words. We all like praise. We all like to think we have a good reputation. But attachment is at play there, and if we leave it without assessing it, then we're going to be in trouble. So we're all working to decrease our attachment to reputation, to approval, to praise, to getting it right, and also to reduce the aversion that we have to hearing words that we don't like, knowing what they can and can't do for us. So when we don't have a way to correctly evaluate our own state of mind, then if others evaluate us in a positive way, we can become very elated. We feel worthwhile. But if they criticize us, we feel angry, deflated, depressed, leads to all those kinds of feelings. But this leaves us in a very vulnerable state, doesn't it? Because we're relying on others to tell us who we are. And how do they know? I don't even know who I am. How can someone else know who I am, except maybe my teacher? So we address this by being honest about what states of mind are arising. So we study these different states of mind. And not just studying them once, not just knowing the lists. There's 22 of these, there's 5 of those, 5 of those. but really applying them to check, well, what is arising in my mind? Am I being deceitful in this moment? Am I putting on a pretension? What's really going on here? So we're honest about the states of mind that are arising. We're honest about applying antidotes in our mind. That's a shared value that we have in our community. And then we can see ourselves more clearly. So we know our faults. We know we make mistakes, but we can remedy those mistakes. We can apply antidotes. I like that verse when we do the food offering ceremony, when we say, although we are not perfect, we will do our best to be worthy of your offering. That's true. I have to chuckle every time I hear that because, oh my God, we are not perfect. And when you've been here for 2.5 weeks, you start to see that. But where we are perfect is we are perfectly trying to grow. I think that's where our perfection comes in. So in this way, when we learn to evaluate ourselves, we don't go up and down so much. There's more of an equanimous state of mind. Now, there's something that we need to be clear about, and that there's a lot of fine print here. And the fine print says, this takes a heck of a lot of work. It sounds so simple, but it takes a heck of a lot of work to really perfect. It's interesting that people who are self-confident are more likely to accept responsibility for their actions and their emotions, and they do what they believe is right simply because it's right, not because they're worried about someone praising them or not even worried about someone criticizing them. And I think self-confident people are more willing to be vulnerable. Again, they trust that they can deal with the vulnerability. They trust in their own goodness so that a vulnerable moment doesn't undermine them. Instead of boasting about accomplishments, with self-confidence, we can just feel content thinking, you know, I did a good job. I know I did a good job. I feel it. I had a good motivation. I started with a good motivation, and I carried through. And then if we do receive compliments from others, then we can be very graceful with that. Because actually, any compliments that we receive are coming on the kindness of many, many beings who have helped us to develop those good qualities. So we learn to rely more on the wise ones and their teachings for guidance. We've seen this a lot in Shantideva's texts. And we learn to rely less on the unwise, childish, sentient beings who are still controlled by karma and afflictions. But that's usually who we turn to when we're stressed or when we're lonely, when we're sad, when we're not feeling on top of our game. And one of the biggest drains, I think, on our self-confidence is our own negative self-talk. So it's very important that we're paying attention to what we're saying to ourselves and really listening to what is the background chatter that's happening all day long and challenging the thoughts that come up in our mind. Is this true? How do I know this is true? If it's not true, what antidotes can I apply to counter this way of thinking? And then we spend some time thinking about what Dharma antidotes we can apply. Sometimes it's hard to remember, oh, I should apply the Dharma right now, especially when the afflictions are at play. So the self-confidence that we're aiming for is self-confidence without being self-important. And if we're really self-confident, then we don't need to be self-important. And it's a work in progress, at least it is for me.